All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is Sean Rogers here at Zyxel. I am the product manager for our Nebula cloud solution, and that's what we're going to be talking to today. This is just going to be sort of a light overview of some of the features in Nebula and why it is that if you're not using Nebula today, you may want to start using it here in the future. As we go through today, if you have any questions, go ahead and send them in using the question and answer part of the Zoom interface. Again, use the question and answer, not chat. Don't raise your hand. Question and answer. Send those in. And depending on the question, I'll answer it as we go through, or I will save it for the end of today's presentation. So we'll start talking off a little bit here about what is Nebula. So Nebula was what we call the first full stack cloud networking solution for SMB. So what does that mean? Short version of it, it is a cloud-based management platform for your computer networking equipment. So full stack meaning that it wasn't just access points or it wasn't just one or two types of stuff. Full stack meaning all of the core parts of your network can be managed in Nebula: switches, security gateways, access points, etc. Um, So we launched this all the way back in 2016, and we've been working on it and improving it ever since. That's why we're saying we're the first. Back in 2016, when we started this, there was no other cloud solutions aimed at SMB. Everything that was out there at that point, for the most part, was aimed at enterprise or was aimed only at access points. Cisco Meraki being probably the most famous name in this space and the one that most of you are probably more likely to be familiar with if you haven't used Nebula. It's a very similar thing, only aimed at SMB instead of enterprise. So this is showing here on this slide, this is sort of everything that goes into setting up a brand new network install for one of your customers. And the idea behind this is with Nebula to either eliminate or drastically reduce the amount of time you spend working on these different parts of the deployment, saving you money and time. So we'll just hit some of the highlights here. Nebula has been designed to get you up and running in just a few minutes. It's really just a couple clicks through the Nebula interface. At any point, you can log into nebula.zyxel.com, start setting up some of your customers, start setting up their sites, even before you've got the hardware on hand. We've got a number of wizards in there that make it easy to get at least the basic settings that you would need to get a network going in there. Obviously, depending on the level of security and customization, there may be a lot more work that goes into it to getting everything there, but just the basics up and running, just a few minutes. So with Nebula, you can start setting up everything without unboxing. As I mentioned, at any point, you can just go to nebula.zyxel.com, log in, and start creating new customer accounts that you're going to manage and the sites they're going to manage. Some of the basic settings that you may want to use, you can set up at any time. Some device specific settings. You will need to have the hardware on hand, although you won't need to have necessarily taken it out of the box. Most Nebula equipment has a QR code located on the outside of the box. You simply scan that with our mobile app, assign that device to a customer and to a site, and then you can start configuring it at any point. So you can have the hardware sent to you, start doing your configuration, ship the hardware off to the customer site, and then all they have to do is plug it in. Nebula hardware will automatically reach out to the cloud, see that you want to manage it with the Nebula cloud, and will automatically download the configuration that you've got set for that site and for that specific device. So to use Nebula, all you need is a web browser. There's no additional hardware you need. There's no cloud keys. There's no CNA devices. There's no virtual machines that need to be set up or a server that needs to be set up someplace. You just plug it in and go. And to manage and configure your devices, you just go to our website, nebula.zyxel.com. Access anywhere, anytime. So again, everything that you're going to be doing is going to be done through the cloud. There is nothing that needs to be configured locally on the hardware, with one tiny exception, and I will talk about that here. But basically, anywhere you've got access to an internet connection and a web browser, you have access to all of your customers and all of their sites. So all configuration is done in the cloud. The one exception to this is at initial configuration. If you must do fixed IP addresses at initial configuration, you will need to log into the hardware and set up that fixed IP for it, so it can reach out to the cloud. Our suggestion, however, is to set everything up initially using DHCP and then convert the devices to a fixed IP afterwards. So basically, when you first set up the network, use DHCP to get the devices onto the network, and then switch it over to a fixed IP network after they've already connected to the cloud. Yeah, okay. We'll hit some of the stuff here. So on the wireless side of things, we make it really easy for you to provide guest access. So this is whether we're talking about a vendor coming to visit your customer on site, or a sales guy, or whether you're looking to provide guest access at something like a coffee shop, restaurant, a small hotel. We make it easy to do Wi-Fi guest access on Nebula. So the APs and the APs themselves have a built-in captive portal. Um, so they can redirect for you there. We've got a lot of flexible options as far as granting access through that captive portal. We can have them simply agree to a terms of service. We can have them log in with the username and password that you provide them. We can have them register their own email address and password to log in. We can use Facebook to have them log in. So a lot of flexibility there as far as how you do that captive portal. And then, of course, if you need more customization, we can always have it point to a website that you host to provide stuff on there for you. So it's really easy to use. And with our access points, you do not necessarily need managed switches and gateways on that same network. The captive portal function is built entirely into the AP. The APs also have some other interesting tools built in. So one of the main ones here is something we call layer 2 isolation. So we have the ability at the access point level to restrict by MAC address what devices on the network those wireless users can directly send traffic to. So basically, it allows you to wall off those guest users without necessarily needing to configure a my mind's going blank here. VLAN on the switches, excuse me. So normally when you're doing guest access, right, you want to set up a VLAN on the switch. You have that mapped into your router or your gateway. But the challenge, what we run into a lot, is a lot of these smaller mom and pop shops. They don't have managed switches that can handle VLAN. So the layer 2 isolation is a way of being able to provide guest access and isolation without needing to use VLANs on your switches or gateway. We also have the ability on most of our access points to provide NATing on an SSID basis. So you can put a NAT directly onto the guest network. So those users are on a completely different subnet than the rest of your wireless users that work there. Some other features you would expect to find on wireless access points. We have smart mesh functionality, including the ability for our switches, or excuse me, our access points to automatically put themselves in mesh mode should something happen to their wired connection. So instead of having to manually go in and switch them to mesh, they will put themselves in mesh mode if you have that feature enabled. We, of course, support WPA2 and WPA3 enterprise security on all of our SMB access points. Enterprise level security is not available on the Soho access points. And then we support all of the industry standards when it comes to assisted roaming, 802.11r, KV, etc. If you upgrade, or on our switching side of things here, we have intelligent PoE. So intelligent PoE is basically the ability of our switches to monitor the power demand from connected PoE devices and free up budget that would normally be reserved under the standard way of doing PoE. So you can fit more devices on the same switch with a lower budget. So it's a nice way of doing that for you. Of course, got the ability to do VLAN configuration on the switch, 802.1x authentication, loop guard, DHCP server guard, IGMP snooping, and the ability to configure ports across multiple switches at the same time. So as I've said multiple times leading up to this, basically everything is done through the cloud. You don't have to go on site. There is no direct configuration that you do when you're using Nebula. You simply log into the cloud. That includes firmware updates and things like that. On the gateway side of things, we make VPNs really easy. If you're doing site-to-site VPNs between Nebula managed sites, you simply go into the interface, choose the sites you want to network together, choose the topology you want to use, and we configure everything else on the back end to make it work. We also have the ability to do easy configuration for remote users using L2TP, where we can send out a script that will automatically configure VPN settings for iOS, Mac OS, and Windows clients. And this is key here. Nebula has been designed from the ground up, even back in 2016, with the idea that you have a lot of customers. Those customers may have multiple sites. So we've designed it and made it really easy for you to handle multiple sites and multiple customers. Some of the other SMB type cloud managed solutions don't make that so easy, requiring different accounts for each customer you're going to manage, putting caps on the number of devices and customers you can manage per account, things like that. We don't do that. So we'll just show you here the Nebula interface, just really quick. Um, so when you log in here, you have the ability, you choose your customer and it will show you on the screen there. It'll show you a breakdown of their sites that they have, assuming they have multiple sites there. We have the ability to integrate with Google Maps to place visual markers on the map to show where those sites may be, just for geographic reasons. It may be an easier way to find the site you're looking to get into. But anyways, go ahead, choose a site that you want to manage, and it takes you to our dashboard here. So basically the way we've laid this out here is we've got a number of widgets. These are customizable here in the middle of the screen. To make it easy to jump between your customers or between different sites, we have two pull downs here. The first pull down is a list of customers. We call them organizations. So each of your customers will usually be either at least one organization. In some cases, you may have them set up as multiple organizations. So each customer will be an organization, then each of their sites will be under the site menu. So you can then quickly go to the site menu, pull it down, choose a site, and we'll automatically jump you over to that site. If you need to change customers, same thing. Drop down here, choose the customer you want to manage, and then it'll populate the site list here with all of that customer site. Select their site, and you'll jump over to theirs to be able to configure it. All of these widgets are configurable here, so you can choose which ones you want or use, and some of them depend on, the type of service you're getting, whether you're using one of our gateways or not, etc. But we can show you things like PoE utilizations, how many devices are on or offline, which client devices are using a bunch of your traffic, which specific applications are using your traffic on the network. And then all of your configuration, monitoring, troubleshooting tools are over here on the left-hand side of the page. So you simply select the one you want there. A little menu pops out to delve deeper into it. So you can see here, this is our connected devices page. By default, it will show you all of your clients that are on the network, both wired and wireless. You can then choose just to look at wired clients or just to look at wireless clients. The general view here is just going to show you the description of the device, what it's connected to, MAC addresses, IP address, etc. If you choose to jump over to just look at wireless devices, you can see things like which SSID they're connected to, what type of security they're using, what their current signal strength is, if they're not currently online, the last time they are online, the data rate they're connected to, etc. On the switch side of things, when you pull up the switches, we've got a nice visual representation here of the ports, whether anything's plugged into them, what speed they're plugged in at, and whether or not PoE is being provided over those ports. We've got some tools here to do pings, power cycles. I think we've added traceroute since the screenshot was made. So a number of tools you can use to help troubleshoot issues. We have the ability here to use Google Maps or to load in your own floor plan and be able to put your devices on that floor plan to better visualize what's going on. And then we've got charts down here showing bandwidth utilization over time. Port configuration is really easy. Pull up a list of all the ports, select the ones you want to configure, and then configure them all at once. So that's kind of Nebula in a nutshell. Everything I've been talking about up to this point is included in the free version of Nebula. So that's something else that makes us different than most of our competitors. Our cloud management platform is free for you to use. We do have some optional licenses that we'll talk about here in a little bit that unlock some additional features. But just when we're talking about the free version of Nebula, everything I've talked about up to this point is included with the free version of Nebula. Free version of Nebula lets you configure an unlimited number of customers, and an unlimited number of sites under those customers. So it's not one of those things where we say it's free, and after you add 5 devices, we say, whoa, you got to give us some money now. Nope, it is free. So we'll talk briefly about the term Nebula Flex because you will see that on our website in a lot of our documentation. So I do want to explain it really quick. Short version is when Nebula first came out in 2016, we sort of copied the Meraki Cisco way of handling things. We had Nebula hardware if you wanted cloud management, and we had regular Zyxel hardware if you wanted to manage things the traditional way. Over time, we decided that doesn't really work for the SMB space. It makes us have to stock, basically 2 versions of every piece of hardware. We didn't like that. So instead, what we did is we implemented this Nebula Flex technology. So basically, Nebula Flex means instead of having different hardware for standalone or for cloud, we have one piece of hardware that can work either way. So you can standardize on a certain piece of hardware, and based on your customer and application, you can choose to manage it the traditional way, or you can choose to manage it in the Nebula cloud. So anything that says Nebula Flex can be used in either mode. It's really easy. By default, all the hardware will be in standalone mode out of the box. Now, to configure it to operate in Nebula Cloud, you don't do anything to the hardware. You do not have to log into our hardware and tell it it's going to be in cloud mode, with the exception of a couple of switch models and maybe some of our security products. But in general, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's on the box or it's on the product itself, assign it to a network in the cloud in Nebula. The hardware, every few minutes, will check the Nebula cloud, and if it sees that you now want to manage it in Nebula, it will automatically reboot itself into Nebula mode and download the configuration from the cloud. So nothing you have to do on the hardware itself. You simply log into Nebula, add the device, it will automatically put itself into cloud mode. If at any point you decide you don't want to use this in cloud mode anymore, to switch it back to standalone mode, you just log into Nebula again, remove it from Nebula, and within a few minutes, the device will automatically reboot itself into standalone mode. Now, a key thing here is the configurations in the cloud are completely different than standalone configurations. So because of that, if you switch it to standalone mode, it will be on the default config that it would have as if it was a new device. Put it into cloud mode, it will automatically download the configuration that's in the cloud. And again, if for some reason you switch it again to standalone mode, it will lose that configuration and reboot as a basically blank device ready for you to configure. So when it comes to hardware, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So we also have something called Nebula Flex Pro. And as a general rule, all Nebula Flex Pro means is the hardware comes bundled with 1 year of our optional Pro Pack license. In the case of our access points, it means that these access points can also be managed with a local controller. So even if you aren't going to be using Nebula to manage your APs, if you're planning to use a local controller, like the ones built into our USG Flex, you do need to buy a Nebula Flex Pro AP. But otherwise, if you see Nebula Flex Pro, it means there's 1 year of Pro Pack bundled with the device. If you just see Nebula Flex, it's out of the box, just the free version of Nebula. You can always buy and add the Pro Pack license later if you do decide you want to use it. One area where things get a little bit confusing is on the USG Flex and the ATP series. So on the USG Flex, if you're using it in the traditional mode, you just buy a standard Pro Pack license. However, we have the ATP series, which is in the process of being phased out. That doesn't use its own doesn't use a Nebula license. To manage it in Nebula, you have to buy the Gold license, which includes UTM features. So as long as you have a valid Gold license, you have also 1 year of Pro Pack bundled with that Gold license. And the same thing happens over in the USG Flex. The reason we are phasing out the ATPs is we now have the ability to convert a USG Flex device into a basically an ATP device via a software license. So if you are using a USG Flex with that ATP Gold license, that Gold license includes your Pro Pack, no additional Pro Pack license if you're using the gold ATP function. If you're using the standard UTM functions, you do still have to buy a standard ProPack license if you want to use it with ProPack. Okay, so now I'll talk about licensing. So we've got a bunch of different optional licenses for you. The first one here is that free version I was talking about basically for most of today's presentation, that we call base pack. So if you're in the Nebula interface, you will see it referred to as the base pack. That just means free. We also offer a plus pack license and a pro pack license. The plus pack is a cheap license, which just adds some very basic features. It's designed to compete with some of the low end, small business cloud offerings. Basically, and I'll have a slide where I go through it in detail, but the short version is plus pack. The main reason to go into plus pack is it stores more logs in the cloud. It gives you a few more admin accounts. And the big one here is it gives you push alerts if something goes offline. And then ProPack is what most of you guys out there are using if you're not using the free version. It's particularly unlocks a lot of features that if you're providing managed services to your customers, you probably want. Pricing, it's kind of hard to say, depending on markup, but we'll say ProPack should be $35 retail per device per year. Plus pack is probably, I think, $12 to $15 per device per year. And then of course the base pack is free. Now these licenses, the way we do the licenses, so let's say you want to use ProPack or Plus Pack, but let's just say Pro. It's done on an organization basis. So again, each of your customers you will have set up as their own organization in the Nebula interface. So if you want to upgrade one of your customers to ProPack, you will go to their organization and you will add ProPack licenses for every Nebula compatible device that they have. So if they have 5 devices on their network, you will need to have 5 ProPack licenses. If they have 25 devices on their network, you will need to have 25 ProPack licenses. If any device does not have that ProPack license, the organization stays as a free on the free version. So every device in the organization has to have a license. And again, each of your customers is their own org, so you can absolutely have a mix and match. Some of your customers are using free, some of your customers are using plus, some of your customers are using pro. No problem there. Now, when the licenses expire, you will get plenty of notifications from us letting you know that licenses are about to expire. And then once they have expired, we will let you know. We give you a 15-day grace period. Between when the license expires and when we drop you back down to the free version of Nebula. So you've got plenty of times to get that worked out between yourself and your customer, whether you're going to continue using one of those optional licenses or not. Now, another cool thing here we have for you is almost every license we have, we offer a free, I believe, 30-day trial of through the Nebula interface. So you can just log into the Nebula interface, go to the licenses, and all the free trials are right there for you. You can choose which ones to test out. So you can play with it in the free version, use the free demo of ProPack, play with it, and then see if it's worth it to you to continue using ProPack or not. Same goes with Plus, same goes with some of our security licenses and stuff like that. I'm just going forward here. We'll talk briefly about some of the features that ProPack unlocks for you. On the wireless side of things, we have machine learning or artificial intelligence that monitors your wireless performance and can automatically make changes to your wireless configuration based on any issues it sees in monitoring your client devices. ProPack unlocks some additional features if you're doing IPTV over switches. It generates reports letting you know the quality of signals, letting you know any channels that have been dropping packets or having issues like that, or set-top boxes, and it can suggest for you which settings to change to solve those issues, as well as it unlocks additional IGMP settings. So if you need to tweak IGMP, let me back up. Free version of Nebula has IGMP snooping. If you need IGMP snooping and you need to be able to modify some of those settings, you do need ProPack to get access to those. We have an automatic topology view where we will automatically map out for you which devices are plugged into which other devices. So it's a handy tool if your customer's having issues and you don't remember what's plugged into what, we can show you what's there to help you with troubleshooting, etc. We have another type of license here for you called the MSP pack. So the MSP pack license is its own independent thing. So you can have MSP pack with the free version of Nebula. You can have MSP pack with Plus. You can have MSP pack with Pro. It is independent of them. So whereas the Pro and Plus licenses, you have to have one license per device. The MSP pack is assigned to an admin account. So it unlocks additional features for the admin account it is associated with. So normally most of our customers will have one or two MSP pack licenses that they'll assign to the boss's basically admin account. And then most of the day-to-day guys who may have access to the admin account will not have an MSP pack. So the MSP features are just assigned to those accounts that have them. And as the name implies, it unlocks some features that we think might be happy if you are a MSP, a managed services provider. So the first thing it does is it gives you, I showed a similar slide to this earlier, or maybe it was actually the same slide. Basically, it gives you what's called the MSP portal view, where before, if you choose a customer, it shows you all of their sites in a little summary page. This shows you all of your customers in a little summary page, letting you know how many clients they have, showing you how many sites they have. Yeah, this is actually the wrong screenshot. I apologize. It's a similar screenshot to this. And it'll show you all your customers, how many sites they have, if any of those sites are offline, whether that customer is using the free or pro pack, when licenses are set to expire, etc. Whoops. Thought I had another slide there. My bad. Some other features that the MSP pack unlocks for you is the ability to create admin teams. So instead of adding and removing your admin accounts on a per customer or per site basis, you can assign different people to different teams and then simply add or remove teams to those orgs or those customer or those sites to make it really quick and easy to change out who has access to what. Really handy if one of your admins leaves, you can quickly just remove them from a team and it'll automatically remove them from all the orgs and sites that they had access to. It also allows you to get push notifications for all of your sites, even those that are using the free version of Nebula. Normally that would require you buy a plus pack license for each site you want push. MSP license gives you push licenses or push notifications for all of the sites that you manage. It gives you the ability to clone existing sites and it gives you the ability to change features across multiple customers at the same time, things like that. So it's a nice feature. Another one it does, one last one I'll talk about, is it allows you to add your own branding to the Nebula interface. So if you're giving your customers maybe read-only access to the Nebula interface, or maybe you're allowing their IT guy to go in and make his own configuration changes, you can replace the Nebula branding with your company's branding. You can replace the Zyxel contact information with your contact information. Now, they still know it's a Nebula product because they're still going to nebula.zyxel.com to log in. But once they get in there, it's your brand that they're seeing. So now I'll talk about the differences between the base pack, the plus pack, and the pro pack license. So all of them give you unlimited access to the Nebula interface. They give you access to the map and floor plan visualization. They give you the ability to configure all your different devices. They do that zero touch auto deployment where the devices can automatically put themselves in cloud mode and download their configuration. Firmware management and firmware scheduling is done through all versions of it here. Access to the Nebula application, or excuse me, app on iOS and Android, you have the ability to do that. Now we get to the first one here where there are some differences. So you see here when it comes to logging, the free version of Nebula only stores 24 hours of logs in the cloud. And on top of that, if you don't log into your customer site for 30 days, it will stop collecting the logs until you log in and turn on logging again. So 24 hours worth of logs are stored in the cloud. Now, a little bit more is actually stored in the back end. So if you have to contact us for some tech support, we have access to more than 24 hours of stuff. But for you, you're walled off at 24 hours worth. Plus pack gives you 7 days of logs stored in the cloud, and ProPack, we store a year's worth of logs in the cloud for you. Now, that's in the cloud. We do support syslog, so you can always use the free version of Nebula, set up your own syslog, and have it export all the logs that you can store on your syslog server that you want. Another area where there's some differences here is the number of admin accounts that you can have assigned to one organization. And again, an organization is your customer. So the free version of Nebula gives you 5 admin accounts per customer. Plus Pack gives you 8 accounts per customer. ProPack, an unlimited number of admin accounts per customer. We also have a cloud authentication server. So this you can use for MAC filtering. You can use this for 802.1x authentication. So there are differences here based on how many entries you can have in our cloud hosted database. Free version gives you 50 entries. Plus Pack gives you 100 entries, and then Pro Pack, it's an unlimited number there. And if you don't want to use our cloud, most features that use some sort of authentication can also use a standard radius server. So if you want to set up your own server, you can do that. These limitations don't only apply to our cloud hosted database. You get access to all of the core features in all of our products here in the free version of Nebula, including Mac and 802.1x authentication. And now we're going to start talking about features that are only available in Plus and Pro. So advanced firmware scheduling. So free version lets you schedule when you want your sites to update their firmware. With Plus and Pro Pack, we give you the ability to set up different schedules based on the type of device. We can let you set up schedules for individual devices independent from each other. So it gives you just more flexibility on firmware scheduling. Reporting. So we have a number of advanced reports that Nebula can generate for you. We can have those set up to automatically generate, email them to you or to your customer. So that requires Plus and Pro Pack. That automatic network topology view, as I already mentioned earlier, that's a Pro Pack or Plus Pack feature. Push alerts, Plus Pack, Pro Pack feature. Wi-Fi vouchers. So Wi-Fi vouchers requires a Plus or Pro Pack. This is another way of doing guest access that uses automatically generated vouchers that are good for certain periods of time that you would use. So if you want every guest to get their own unique username and password, that's only good for a certain period of time, you do need Plus or Pro Pack. This is mostly something that's used at like cafes where you're charging people for access. And then Pro Pack only stuff, we have a user audit change log. So we can store there, in addition to the normal login information, we can store every time somebody has made a configuration change and which user made that configuration change. So again, it might be handy for you if you're troubleshooting things and wanting to know, well, wait a minute, why did we configure that this way? You can find out who configured it that way and when, so you can talk to them about it. The ability to sync configuration changes between different sites and under a certain customer, the ability to clone existing sites under a customer and use templates to push out certain changes, the ability to back up and restore your switch configurations, the ability to basically open up a web chat in the evening, US time, with our team in Taiwan that maintains the servers, or to open a ticket directly with them instead of having to call in to our local support team. Advanced AAA features. Again, this is something you would probably use if you're doing some sort of paid hotspot network that requires ProPack. That advanced Wi-Fi artificial intelligence that we already mentioned earlier, that's a ProPack feature. Advanced switch features. So vendor-based VLANs, the ability to automatically assign a VLAN tag based on the MAC the first few digits of the MAC address. So for instance, you can set it up to automatically recognize the brand of IP phone you use and automatically put those phones on the voice VLAN, etc. The ability to do USG packet captures through the cloud. And the CDP, collaborative detection and response, CDR, collaborative detection and response, that requires ProPack. Okay, here was a slide I thought I had earlier that was just out of order. My bad. I screwed this up and had them out of order. We already talked about it, so I will skip it. We just didn't have the right slide up before. And then on top of what we've talked about up to this point when it comes to licenses, we also have a bunch of security licenses that are optional for you. So we have what's called Connect and Protect and Connect and Protect Plus. So this is something that basically allows you to unlock UTM-like features directly on individual access points. So this is an optional license you can purchase. Maybe your customer doesn't has a router that they got from the ISP. You don't want to replace it, or you can't replace it with a UTM gateway. You can still enable UTM-like security on the wireless network by adding these licenses to a compatible access point. And it works primarily with our 5 and 6 series, or 500, 600, 5000, 6000 series access points. We'll skip through this. And then, of course, there are also the regular standard UTM type licenses. So if you're using our USG Flex ATP series, there are a number of other security options you can enable that are completely independent from Nebula that just go along with that security hardware. And I won't talk about them today. So now we'll hit just some final things here for you. These are some frequently asked questions we get. It has to do with the Nebula architecture. So our cloud is hosted by Amazon AWS. We don't have shards. We're not setting this up on our own data center somewhere. We are using Amazon AWS. Why? They are considered one of the best cloud hosted servers out there. They give us unlimited scalability. They give us the easy way to host this in different countries across the world, either at distributing our resources into different nodes for better reliability, or because in some countries they have their own standard privacy rules that require the servers be hosted in that country. So if you're in one of those countries, we support that. So we get a lot of questions also, well, wait a minute, can I use this with HIPAA? Can I use this with PCI? Some of my customers are in Europe. Do you support GDRP? And the answer to all of those questions is yes. And the reason we can say that is because none of your customers' traffic is going into our cloud. The only communication, the only data that goes to our cloud is the management information that goes between the hardware and our cloud. So none of your credit card processing data goes into our cloud. None of your customers' patient records sees our cloud. Traffic that's supposed to be LAN traffic stays on the LAN. Traffic that's supposed to go out to the internet goes directly out to the internet. So the only thing that's going to our cloud is the devices checking to see if they're cloud managed, downloading configs, downloading firmware updates, uploading logs. So because of that, it's absolutely, you're able to use this with PCI, with GDRP, etc. And as I said, there's a bunch of other ones out there. Basically, every country where Zyxel sells this, we have the ability to do it. And by default, the hardware automatically geolocates what country it is, so it knows what servers to use based on whatever the local rules are for stuff. Another question we get is, well, how secure is this data? It's only management data, you're saying, Sean, but still, I don't want people seeing that. There may be some passwords in there or something like that for our admin accounts. So where some of our competition has created their own in-house, security protocols and communication protocols, we did not do that. We used industry standard netconf. So it's an industry standard for communication and management. And that is what we use. It isn't something we made in-house. This is a industry standard way of doing things here for you. So just to highlight here, the main benefits here of Nebula is makes it easy to deploy new networks, makes it easy to manage your existing customers and their networks, makes it easy for you to troubleshoot things. It's just plug and play, ready to go. So if this sounds interesting and you haven't yet played with Nebula, at any point you can go to nebula.zyxel.com, click get started, and then one of the options there, they'll ask you to log in, or they'll give you the option to go to a live demo. So you can simply log into that live demo, see what's going on, play around with it, and get an idea if this is something that might be good for you. If you are one of our reseller partners, you are part of our partner program. I believe we are still giving out 60-day demo kits. You just talk to your salesperson, which would either be Jacob, Andy, or David Chen. And they can hook you up with a demo kit that you can sit in your lab and play around with a little bit more. And then lastly here, we have a YouTube page, Zyxel America channel. Um, So if you go to YouTube, type Zyxel, there's a bunch of different channels because we're an international company and each region and country has their own. So for North America, we are Zyxel America channel. Most of our webinars will be recorded and posted there within 48 hours. So if you've missed a presentation or you had to step away for a while, you can always go there to find them. That's also where we have video case studies, best practices documents, guides, and things like that. And then also you can connect to us on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, let's go ahead and send them in with the question and answer here. So Raphael has been asking if we are compliant with NIST 800-171. And the answer to that is I have no idea. I'm not familiar with NIST 800-171. It isn't one that people usually ask us about. So I don't know that answer today. My suggestion for you on that would be to reach out to your salesperson at Zyxel. And send that question to them, and then we can sort of look into it and get back to you with what it is. So I'm not that familiar with it. And then another question from Raphael here is, where is Nebula Cloud hosted at? So as I mentioned, it's hosted with AWS. Our servers are distributed globally, and the servers you're going to use is just going to depend where that hardware is located at. So for instance, if you're in Europe, that hardware has to be in Europe to comply with, I think, GDRP and maybe some of the other requirements they have over there. I think Ireland, if I'm remembering correctly, has their own rules. So there's a separate server just for those people in Ireland. I'm not sure if Brexit has changed where it's hosted or not, but basically based on where where you're accessing it determines sort of which parts of the AWS cloud you're going to be communicating with. Generally, it's going to be geographically located close to you just for better performance and speed, and certain services are distributed. So it just depends and what function of it is. So, even in Europe, the logs may be required to be stored in the EU, but maybe certain other features are not required to be in the EU and maybe hosted someplace else. I don't really have a detailed breakdown of exactly which servers are where for each different function in Nebula, but hopefully that gives you at least a rough idea of what's going on with it. I don't have any other questions. So I just want to thank everybody who turned out today. I hope that you found at least some useful information in here. My email is up there on the screen. Feel free to send me feedback or feel free to anonymously reach out to your salesperson and pass them feedback. And I hope to see you at one of our future webinars. As a general rule, the Tuesday-based webinars are usually a little bit more tech-focused, a little bit more detailed, and Thursday webinars are generally a little bit more broad ranging, like today's, more a lot of introduction and general overview type presentations, usually on Thursdays. Not always the case, but that's usually how it works out. I host webinars. Try, who's our product manager for security and switches, he hosts webinars. And then our sales engineer, Marcus, also hosts his own webinars. And then some of the sales guys do their own. If you're looking for more of a salesy type presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you turning out.